Alright guys, this is Lee with Bestop, and we're here today to walk you through the installation of a Trektop Pro on this JK Wrangler. Now for this black JK, we've chosen to install a granite gray Trektop Pro, so that should be pretty exciting on this black vehicle. We have 5 other twill material colors available, so you can check them all out on bestop.com. Well, let's get started. Now we're going to go over some of the things you can expect to see when you open up the box. The Trektop Pro comes in 2 boxes. When you open the box that has the rear glass, you're also going to find these components. So what we're working with here is the center halo piece, driver side and passenger side halo piece, as well as the main halo bracket. Also in that box, you'll find a bag with some weather seals, 2 strut brackets, as well as the jumper harness to connect your defrost. Back to the jumper harness. Your vehicle can come in a couple different ways configured by Jeep. If you have a soft top vehicle, chances are it does not have any controls for defrost, no controls for rear wiper or anything along those lines. In that case, if you want to run a defrost, you'll have to wire in a switch that we can provide you with a separate kit to be able to do that. However, if your vehicle came from the factory with a hardtop, good news is you're pre-wired for most of this stuff already. Which means you can take this harness and just plug the soft top in. You will already have a defrost working with the controls on your dash. If you purchase our optional wiper kit, you also have the controls necessary to control the wiper kit. Now, if you have a soft top vehicle that you don't have those controls, you can still control the wiper kit, though it will involve you purchasing from Mopar the whole switch control kit that will upgrade your dash to give you the stock controls and the climate controls that come with a traditional hardtop JK. All right, now for box 2 of 2, in addition to the main deck header assembly and the 2 side windows, you can find these components in the box. And what we're working with here are the 2 rear door surrounds. You can tell they're the rear because of the big 90-degree shape here. The 2 front door surrounds, which are much more simple, as well as the number 2 bow assembly, 2 window carriers. Okay, now these are the top arches. Now there's a white tape on the top that you really just need to remove. You can do it right now, or you can do it when you go to use these, but you want this black foam to be exposed when you're using it on the top. All right, inside the small parts kit for box 2 of 2, we're gonna find the following components laid out here on the table. We'll have 6 door surround knobs, 2 short, 4 long. We'll have 2 cable spring brackets, 2 Sunrider pivot brackets, 2 number 2 bow pivot brackets, 2 rear brackets, a seal kit to be used along the header, as well as all the small nuts and bolts here. Now what you'll want to identify here is the difference between these 14 millimeter M6 and these 25 millimeter M6 bolts, as well as the difference between the flange nuts and the nylock nuts. Otherwise, make sure you have all the components laid out and we'll get started. All right, for the first step, we're going to attach these cable spring brackets to the window carrier, and we're going to find the single hole that's not slotted. It's over here by itself. It's easy to identify, and make sure you have the channel on the top here. We're going to grab the cable spring bracket, and that really only aligns properly one way with the hole still lining up. If you try to put it on the wrong way, you're going to have some difficulty getting the bolt through. So we'll line that up. Place the washer on there, and then we'll grab one of these 14 millimeter bolts, drop that through, and apply this flange nut to the backside. And repeat for the other side. All right, now whether you're getting more fun than a hard top or upgrading an old soft top, the first step is going to be to remove the top. We've already done that on this JKU, so the next thing we need to do is access 2 bolts underneath this sport bar. So the first one we're going to get to by starting at the B pillar here. So if we unfold a little bit of here, we'll find the tail of the zipper, and we're going to run this all the way back. Once you have this zipper completely undone, we'll just do a little bit of these other 2 to access these 2 bolts. Grab your 13 millimeter socket or wrench. We'll just repeat that step on both sides of the vehicle. Now we're going to take our rear bracket and we're going to attach it to the back of the vehicle. So take a minute and orient the bracket so you can figure out which one is left and which one is right. And essentially we're going to use the same holes from the bolts that we just removed, and we're going to want this fin to be horizontal, even, and outside of the vehicle. The next step, what we're gonna do is after you determine the orientation of this bracket is we're gonna cut 2 slits in the sport bar padding to allow for these tabs to go through. So you want these slits to be about 1/4 inch underneath the zipper and enough room for the tab in this bracket to fit through it, and then we can zip everything back up. So I'm gonna mock this in place, figure out about where this cut needs to be, and I'm gonna take a sharp utility knife and cut in a line with the bolt hole. And I can mock this up as I go to make sure everything's gonna line up, and it looks like that hole's in a good spot. So we'll mark another one for the rear. Again, we wanna be in line with the bolt hole, about 1/4 inch underneath the zipper. Use a sharp blade. This material's a little bit easier to work with than it seems like it would be. Now we'll take the bolts that we removed and just feed them through the bracket. You'll notice that these holes are slotted too, so we're not going to tighten these bolts all the way down. We're going to leave them a little bit loose so that we can allow for some adjustment as we fit the top all together. But once you have these snug, you want to see how everything's going to look together. All right, so you can see that these cuts were made in the right spot and we're looking good. And we'll tackle the passenger side bracket as well. Okay, now that we have the rear brackets in place, we're gonna move on to the door surrounds. We'll start with just the rears first. So we're gonna unfold this, and notice 2 things. We have a C shape here that's gonna fit in the cutout on the sport bar. And we also have a locator pin on the bottom that's gonna sit inside the vehicle tub here. So we'll just fit this up to the vehicle. All right, now up in the front, we're gonna wanna pay attention to this mucket, because if we don't sit the door surround inside of this rubber seal, that can cause a potential leak issue. So just pull the door seal or the door surround up and allow that mucket to sit nicely underneath it. As we mentioned, we have 4 long and we have 2 short door surround knobs. We're gonna take one of the long door surround knobs and come from the top down through the C collar on this door surround knob. Make sure the fabric is out of the way on the top and bottom. We'll do the same process on the passenger side. All right, before we put the front door surrounds onto the Jeep, we're going to take a minute and make sure we have these oriented correctly. So we want the C to be in the front, and we want the channel here to be facing up. That way you know you have it oriented properly on the vehicle. We'll also take the Sunrider pivot bracket, and we're gonna want this tab facing the front. And there's only one way that that's gonna sit inside this door surround. So it should be, after a minute, fairly easy to orient. We'll line up these 2 holes with the 2 holes in this bracket, and they already have the nut welded into them. So that makes things pretty easy here. We'll line these up. We'll take one of these Phillips head machine screws and place that in each one of these holes. Now this is the passenger side door surround with the C in the front and the channel facing up. And we're gonna repeat the same process with the other Sunrider pivot bracket. All right, back to the driver's side door surround in the front with the Sunrider pivot bracket attached. We'll take the door surround from the front, again with the C toward the front, and just drop it in where the sport bar fabric allows. We'll take the front door surround knob Again, make sure you have the muckets underneath the door surround in the front and the rear. So the front knob is secure. Now in the rear of the door surround, this knob has to pass through the plastic for the front door surround as well as the rear door surround before it goes into the vehicle. So take a quick peek down into this hole to make sure everything's lined up. Now install the passenger side door rail in just the same way. In this section, we're going to take the window carrier and secure it to the rear bracket. Now to orient the window carrier, we want this plastic end cap facing the front of the vehicle with this channel facing the outboard side of the vehicle. We're going to locate 2 vertically slotted holes in the window carrier, and that's what we're going to use to attach to the 2 holes in the rear bracket. So for this, we'll take 2 of the shorter 14 mil M6 bolts, 2 of these washers, and we'll secure on the back with 2 of the flange nuts. Now, worth noting that with this vertical slot in these holes, that allows for the window carrier to be adjusted up or down. So later on when the top is complete, you can adjust the tension in this side window by moving this carrier up or down as it varies the distance from where the window joins to the hardware and where the window joins to the actual vehicle Jeep tub. So with the slotted holes allowing for adjustability in the height of this window carrier, generally a good rule of thumb is to start with this as high as it gets, and if the window is too tight to secure, then we can move it down from there. All right, next we're going to take the halo frame and we're going to attach it to the inboard sides of the window carriers using each side 2 of the M6 by 14 mil bolts, 2 washers, and 2 of the flange nuts. I'll put 1 bolt in this side just to hold it. Now that I have those in place, I'll secure those with 1 nut loosely on each side. Now I'll take care of the front too. There is also some adjustment built into the slotted holes on this end. Good rule of thumb with this one is to slide it all the way forward to begin with, and if you need more tension on the deck, then you can slide it rearward in the future. And what we're using to secure all this hardware is this 4mm Allen wrench and a 10mm socket. All right, in this next section, we're going to take the halo centerpiece and we're going to hold this against the halo frame. This is where it helps if you have a second set of hands. In this section, we're going to attach the left and right halo pieces to the halo frame. So that's going to sit on top of the center halo piece, and we'll hold it together with a nut on the back of the frame. To position this correctly, we'll see the feature in the front of this that's going to fit inside of this window carrier extrusion. Then we'll grab the 25mm M6 Allen head with a washer and feed that through. So that bolt's going to go through the left or driver's side halo piece, then through the center halo piece, then through the halo frame, and we'll secure it with the flange washer in the rear. And we will repeat with the right hand or passenger side halo. And secure using a 4mm Allen again, as well as a 10mm socket or wrench. You may want to leave this still a little bit loose for some adjustment as we sit the rear window. All right, one thing to notice is a small hook feature on the bottom inside of this left halo piece, and that will actually interact with the Jeep tub right here as well, with a small push. All right, we're gonna pay a little bit of attention to the junction between the window carrier and the actual halo. This is not flush right now, and we want it to be. When it comes time to installing your window, the extrusion on your window is gonna slide from the rear to the front, so it's gonna meet this junction as well. So that's why we wanna make sure this is very flush. And this is where keeping some of the hardware loose comes into play. So we've made sure that the hardware on the window carrier is loose, and we're gonna work this area a little bit to give us a nice smooth flush seal between the two. After seating the window carrier flush with the halo side, we're gonna go ahead and tighten down some of this hardware. And we will repeat the steps on the passenger side. All right, next we're gonna install the two strut brackets. So again, take a minute to orient this with the vehicle. This is gonna be the driver's side as we see it here. The hook is gonna interface with the inside of the Jeep tub. The two holes here will go through the side of the halo, and it'll leave this ball on the interior side of the halo piece to hold the stud. So we will secure these using two of the 25mm M6 washers and flange nuts. And we'll secure these again using the 4mm Allen and 10mm socket. This is also going to help the hook interface on the lower outside interact with the Jeep tub. And repeat the steps on the passenger side. For this next step, we're going to secure the halo to the tub up here in the front corner using the M8 bolt as well as the M8 nut. We're going to put a washer on top and on bottom. So what you're going to want to do is feed the washer on the bolt, and then it's easiest if you can come up through the tub with the bolt instead of with the nut. That way you don't drop your nut into an alternate universe down here. To secure this, I'm going to use a 13mm socket and a 13mm open-end wrench on the bottom. And repeat on the passenger side. Now's the time for the seals. We have a long seal and a short seal. The long seal is going to go up around all three pieces of the halo. And you'll notice there's a squishy bulb section of this, and that's what we want facing out so that that smushes up against the glass and makes a nice weather-tight seal for you. There's a couple different ways to do this. You can start on the bottom corners and work your way toward the center. Some people like to start in the middle and work our way outward. No pressure while you're doing this. If you don't get it a perfect seal the first time, or if the corners don't sit well the first time, it's pretty easy to just take it off and do it again. And when you're finished, the angled cut of the seal should match the curvature of the tailgate. All right, excellent. At this point, we have the halo all set, and the next step is to take the rear glass and put it on top of the halo. And we're gonna do that with two of these 25mm long M6 screws per side, 2 washers and 2 of the flange nuts. Now, again, before you do this, it's a good idea to just take the bolt and make sure that the halo frame is aligned with the center halo piece. If you have trouble getting that bolt in, you're better off finding it out now than when you have the glass in your hand. And if you do have trouble, just loosen these bolts and make sure everything is aligned. Once you have your window bolted on and the bolts snug but not super tight, you want to give it a once over and make sure you're working with about the same amount of gap on the left and on the right side so that it's center. If it's not center, make sure the bolt's up here a little bit loose, massage the window where it needs to go, and retighten. All right, let's take a minute and talk about struts. Now these are very easy to install. There's a cup shape on the top and on the bottom, and we have a corresponding ball mount on the window and on the halo piece. So to mount these, we're just gonna snap it onto the ball. In the event that you wanna take this off, if you wanna remove the rear window and go bikini style on your Trektop Pro, it's also pretty simple. We're gonna be looking at 2 small indents on the top and on the bottom of a metal band at the bottom of this strut. And what we're gonna do to remove this is take a simple small flathead screwdriver, slip it under that metal band, and apply a little bit of outward pressure while you're covering the band so it doesn't kind of fly away from you. Just apply this outward pressure while you're pulling away from the ball and it'll pop right off very simply. But to install, we'll raise the window and we will take this cup-shaped section and just snap it right over the ball that's already mounted onto the glass. You may need to rotate the stanchion on the bottom to align the ball with the cup shape on the bottom of the strut. That also snaps into place. So we've secured both top of the strut and the bottom of one strut. Now to get the bottom of this last strut on here, I'm just gonna put a little bit of upward pressure on the glass to snap that into place. Perfect. The last step with this rear glass is the short seal. So we're gonna put this on the bottom of the rear window, and again, with the bulb section facing out toward the tailgate. That way when you shut the tailgate against it, it's gonna create that weatherproof seal for you. And again, we're gonna have the angled cuts in the corners of these to match up with the contour of the vehicle. So we will line this up so it's about even, and then press it onto the bottom of the rear window. I like to start from the center and work my way out. And if you don't get it centered perfectly the first time, it's very easy to remove and redo, but you're gonna end up with a nice overlap on either side. Next, go ahead and grab the seal kit. We're gonna open this up. I'm gonna talk a little bit about what you're gonna find in here because we're not gonna use the whole thing right now. This is gonna be used on the header up front when we install the deck. This is the same thing but the other side, again to use on the header. This is your Bestop sticker for the rear window. These are also for the header. We'll put these aside. And what we're going to use right now are the long and the short pieces. These are both going to be affixed to the tailgate. The longer foam piece is going to be applied all the way to the edge, right along the top, like that. And the shorter foam piece, it's a little bit wider, is going to go down from there. That's going to help create a water management system in the tailgate. We'll do the same thing on the other side of the tailgate. All right, at this point, we want to give everything we've done so far a once over. We strongly encourage you to leave the hardware loose as you go to allow for some adjustment to the fitment as you proceed with the top. And right now is a good time to go through and just tighten everything down. Pretty much everything is as we want it. The window is where we need it. The seals are lining up. Everything's looking good. So go ahead and make sure your door surrounds are tight, your sport bar covers are zipped up, and all your nuts and bolts that you've left loose for some adjustment to this point are now tight. Next, we're going to talk about the arch bows and where they belong on the vehicle. And quickly, how to identify one from the other. And you can see one of these has a foot and the other one does not. The one with the foot is going to be used between the two rear door surrounds by the passenger seat. And the one without the foot is going to be used between the two window carriers in the rear of the vehicle. Okay, you can see that there's a location pre-installed on the window carrier for the rear arch bow to sit into. So we're going to slide it in across the vehicle on the other side. Pretty easy to feel when that seat's in there. And then we're going to kind of reach toward the center of the vehicle and apply a little bit of upward pressure to seat the side towards you. You're going to repeat the same steps with the center arch bow using the loop that's pre-existing in the rear door surrounds. All right, great. Now we're going to do a little bit of prep before we put the deck on the vehicle. And what we're going to do is apply 2 of these sealants. So for positioning, we want the rounded cutout to button right up against the side bow, and then we're going to leave a notch to button right up against this plastic piece here. So we'll go ahead and apply that now. All right, just like so, and we're going to do that on both the passenger and the driver's side. Now we also have these long, thin strips that we're going to apply as well. That's going to go on the fabric right up against the front and right up against the side. For this next step, we get to take the deck header assembly and finally turn this into a soft top Jeep. So what we're going to do is grab a buddy, because that's going to make this easier. And we're going to want to hold the entire deck header assembly out in front of the vehicle and pull the deck backwards, drape it over the hood, and bring the end of the side bow to the Sunrider pivot brackets that we previously installed on the top of the front door surrounds. Those will click in, then we can bring the fabric all the way over the back of the vehicle. All right, you can see we have the top oriented the way it's going to be on the vehicle, with the plastic header up front and the rest of the deck hanging out of the back. So what we're gonna do now is we can let this go. We're gonna a little spin at the top so we still have the plastic deck header oriented the proper way. Now we'll secure the top of the side bows. If your Jeep is lifted like this one, grab your step stool again. Right now we're going to install the number 2 bow pivot brackets right near the top of the soundbar. All right, so we're up here right at the B pillar. This is the rear door, this is the front door. We will unzip a portion of the sport bar covering to expose these 2 bolts, and let's get these out of the way, and we're going to reuse those. All right, now that we have these 2 bolt holes exposed, we're going to take a moment to identify which of these 2 brackets we're going to use. There is a left and a right. So what we're going to be looking for is the slotted of the 2 mounting holes to be toward the rear and outboard side of the Jeep. And we want this tab to be toward the front of the Jeep and going front to back, not side to side. So it looks like we've found the right bracket, and we will use the same bolts we just removed to secure this to the vehicle. All right, so similar to in the beginning, we're gonna make a small slit in this sport bar fabric to allow this tab to come through. All right, that ought to do it for us. We'll zip everything back up together, and we'll repeat the same steps on the passenger side. Okay, up next is the number 2 bow, and when you take it out of the packaging, it's gonna look just like this. So let's get this thing oriented. Easiest piece to do is to unfold both of these so that you can see which way you're working with. With those facing forward, I can tell you that the spring-loaded pull pin is gonna be in the rear, and this is gonna kind of shape over the vehicle. So I'll feed this across the top. First thing we're gonna do is to connect those spring-loaded pull pins to the brackets we just bolted on top, then we'll work on the front of it next. All right, so we'll take this 2 bow assembly and we'll position it so that the spring-loaded pull pin is right above the brackets we just bolted on top of the soundbar. And now we'll go to the passenger side and connect the pull pin over there. For this next step, we're going to secure the front arm of the number 2 bow assembly to the side bow of the deck header assembly, and we're going to do that using the tools and hardware shown here. We have a 3mm Allen head, an 8mm socket, a machine screw with washer and nut, and these 2 bushings. So what we're going to do with these bushings is, notice that there is a thin inner side and a wider outer side, and we're going to position them kind of like an hourglass figure, and we're going to sandwich those right over the arm of the number 2 bow assembly to create a plastic sleeve for this machine screw to slide through. This screw is going to go from the outboard side of the vehicle to the inboard side of the vehicle. So I'm going to thread it through the side bow first. Then I'm going to take the plastic bushings and position them just like so on the number 2 bow assembly to create a sleeve. Then I will push the machine screw through both of those bushings and secure with the nut on the inside. So this is the order you want the hardware to be in. So going from the outside to the inside, we have the head of the machine screw, the washer, the side bow, the bushing with the small end facing inside, the front arm of the number 2 bow, the bushing with the small end again facing inside, as well as the nut. Now we're going to tighten this down, but it does not need to be tight. It just needs to be snug. Over tightening will cause damage to those bushings. And we'll repeat the same steps on the other side. Okay, now with the number 2 bow assembly fully installed on the Jeep, we're going to fold this deck all the way across the back of the vehicle, and then we're going to open up the Sunrider feature in the front. What that's going to do is that's going to take the tension out of the deck so that we can secure this cable spring to the cable spring bracket that we previously attached to the window carrier. What this cable is going to do for us when it's all said and done is when you fold the top forward, the cable and the spring gather tension and secure the side of the top to the top of the door surrounds. So we can take care of that now. We routed the cable underneath the guide screw on the top rear corner of the door surround, and we attached it to the most forward hole of the spring bracket. So now that we've done that, I'm going to take a pair of pliers, and then we'll crimp the hook of the spring around the cable guide bracket. Okay, this is the driver's side quarter window, and there are a couple different styles of attachment points that we'll explain along the way. First of which is going to be what we call a P extrusion that we're going to slide into the window channel across the top here. So we'll do each step. Once we do one step on the driver's side, we'll do it on the passenger side, and we'll let you know as we go along. So that's it for the top, and as you saw, there was that extrusion on the top of the window that we just slid into the channel of the window carrier. So repeat that step on the passenger side, and then we'll go to the back of the door surround next. Here we are at the front of the quarter window, and we're working with the door surround here. There's a channel in this door surround that opens up facing the front of the vehicle, and there is a 90-degree plastic piece sewn into the front of this window. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this window actually 180 degrees so that this channel, this leading edge, actually faces the rear of the vehicle again. I'll show you how that's done here. Just like that. Now when that holds tension, when this window is installed, this is going to hold whether you have your door on or whether you have your door off and you're going doorless. On the bottom of the driver's side window, we have a thick plastic strip that's going to interface with a channel that's built into the tub of the JK. So we're just going to tuck that in, and we're going to go from the front to the back. And the same thing around the corner. All right, along the rear inside of the driver's quarter window, there's another straight piece of plastic that's going to interface with a channel that's built into the plastic side portion of the halo. So we're going to wrap that 180 degrees to interface again here. All right, now with the quarter windows in, and this Jeep is starting to look pretty darn sharp, we're going to secure the deck to the rest of the hardware using these hook and loop strips, and the same strips that we just used to secure the windows as well. Basically a plastic strip we're going to tuck into channels built into the hardware. And we'll start right here in the back in the center. From inside the Jeep, we have a plastic soundbar, and in the center of that plastic soundbar that you can access from above is a metal crossmember. The metal crossmember sits inside of the soundbar, and the soundbar kind of goes from the back underneath and to the front. We have 2 straps sewn to a flap on the inside of the deck that we need to feed in between the plastic crossmember, or the plastic soundbar, and the metal crossmember, as is done on the driver's side here. So from the passenger side, I'm just going to recline and feed the strap in between the 2 from the back, and it will come out of the front. Just like that. All right, so we're not going to pull on these too tightly. We're just going to snug them up and back to the buckle in the back. This is the metal cross member that we just slid this strap under from the back to the front. And this is the plastic soundbar that encompasses that. So now that we have the strap all the way around that, we're going to feed it through this buckle, up in the back and down in the front. And we'll pull it snug but not tight. All right guys, we're nearing the end here. The next step is we're going to close the Sunrider and we're going to latch the header to the windshield. These latches can be pretty tight your first time, but that's really just to ensure the best fit. So let's get to latching. All right, the way these latches work is that the further the latch handle is away from the hook, the lower the hook's going to drop down. So if you try to hook with the latch down, it's not going to work. Hold that latch all the way up toward the roof, pull the hook down around the footman loop, and apply the latch. All right, so now we're back to the rear of the vehicle and we have the jumper harness in hand. Now, as we touched upon at the beginning of this, if your JK was soft top only from the factory, you're not going to have some of these controls that this connects to, and you can solve that with our optional defrost harness or the full Mopar wiring kit. Most JKs were coming from the factory with the hardtop, which gives you these controls to plug into, which is great news for us. It makes this very easy. So we're going to take this harness and plug this right into the vehicle, and if you choose to install the washer arm as well, we'll connect this rubber hose for washer fluid. The other end of this harness, this will plug into the optional wiper arm should you choose to go with that, and this shorter arm will connect to the driver's side of the defrost. This longer side will connect to the passenger side of the defrost. So with the kit, we include a couple P-clips, and on the inside of this halo structure, you'll find a couple embossed areas to screw the P-clips into. So we'll get going on this now. All right, so these are the controls that come with the vehicle, and this is the jumper harness applied with the top. So we will connect these two, and we'll slide over this red locking tab. This comes from the vehicle, and that supplies the windshield washer fluid to the wiper arm, should you choose to go with that. And we will just simply slide this one on. All right, now that's connected as well. All right, so supplied with the kit are these P-clips, and what we're gonna do is wrap this P-clip around the harness, and we'll find these bosses already in the halo. So we'll just connect this P-clip to the bosses in this halo using the screws. All right, so there's the first one, and we'll work our way up here. One important part to note is that there's a disconnect here for the defrost. And what we'll ask you to do is, when you want to remove the rear window to go for a more open air ride or to go bikini style in the Trektop Pro, we're going to disconnect here instead of here. And there we go. All right, so before we connect the defrost harness, we're going to remove this little red protector. After that's gone, you can just slide this right over. And we'll do the same thing on the driver passenger side, then we'll neaten up the wiring. All right, included with the kit are 2 sizes of P-clips. So we're going to use the larger P-clips for the main harness coming up to the defrost. Then when we weasel down to the smaller wire, we can use the smaller P-clip across the top of the halo center section. All right guys, so in just under 4 hours time, we have transformed the look of this JKU with the Trektop Pro in the granite gray color. Looks pretty great. It's going to be a lot more fun for the owner too than the old hardtop was. So hopefully we've made you a pro at installing the Trektop Pro. If you ran into any questions while you were installing, our customer service team is available Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you out there.